The Callahan farm sat at the edge of a small town in Montana, its wide fields stretching to meet the horizon. At the heart of the property stood an American flagpole, the stars and stripes billowing proudly in the wind. For Jack Callahan, a retired Marine, that flag was more than fabric. It was a symbol of sacrifice, freedom, and everything he had fought for. One evening, Jack returned from a trip into town to find the flagpole empty. The charred remains of the flag lay in a heap at the base, ashes scattered by the wind. Anger flared in his chest. Whoever did this had desecrated something sacred. Jack Callahan wasn't the kind of man to let that slide. Jack stood in silence, staring at the ashes. Shadow, his German shepherd, whined at his side, sensing his master's distress. Jack knelt down, running his fingers through the charred remnants. His mind raced with questions and anger. He noticed boot prints in the dirt leading away from the pole. Multiple sets. Whoever had done this hadn't bothered to cover their tracks. They wanted him to know they'd been there. Jack took a deep breath. He'd seen plenty of destruction during his time in the military, but this was different. This was personal. He rose to his feet, his jaw set. "Come on, Shadow. We've got work to do." Jack drove into town to speak with Sheriff Tom Reese, his longtime friend and fellow veteran. The sheriff's office was quiet, the air heavy with anticipation. Reese looked up as Jack entered. "Heard about what happened," Reese said, nodding grimly. "I'm sorry, Jack." "I need names," Jack said, cutting to the chase. "Someone burned my flag." Reese sighed. "We've had some trouble lately. A group of punks from out of town. They've been stirring things up, vandalizing property. But burning a flag, that's a new low." "Do you know where they are?" Jack asked. Reese hesitated. "I've got a few leads, but Jack, don't do anything rash." Jack met his friend's gaze. They made it personal. Jack followed the leads to an old abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Shadow stayed close as Jack approached the building, his senses on high alert. He could hear voices inside, laughter and the clinking of bottles. Jack slipped inside through a side door, moving silently through the shadows. He spotted the group, 5 men, all in their 20s, gathered around a makeshift fire pit. One of them held a tattered American flag, waving it mockingly. Jack stepped into the light, his presence immediately silencing the group. "That's enough," Jack said, his voice cold and steady. The leader of the group, a cocky young man with a shaved head, sneered. "Who's this? The flag police?" "That flag represents everything you take for granted," Jack said. "You've got 2 choices, apologize and leave, or face the consequences." The young man laughed. "You think we're scared of some old vet?" Jack stepped closer. "You should be." The group didn't back down. The leader lunged at Jack, but Jack moved with the precision of a man who'd seen combat. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisting it until the flag fell to the ground. The others rushed forward, but Shadow leapt into action, snarling and baring his teeth. Jack fought with a calm fury, taking down each attacker with calculated strikes. Years of training and experience kicked in, and within moments the group was subdued. The leader groaned, clutching his arm. "You'll regret this," he spat. Jack knelt down, locking eyes with him. "Not as much as you'll regret burning that flag." Word of the confrontation spread quickly through town. Some saw Jack as a hero, while others worried about retaliation. But Jack wasn't concerned about public opinion. He was focused on sending a message. He repaired the flagpole and raised a new American flag, watching it wave proudly in the wind. Below it, he placed a plaque that read, "This land stands for freedom. Respect it." Sheriff Reese visited the farm a few days later. "You made your point," Reese said, "but be careful. These guys have connections. They might come back." "Let them," Jack said. "I'm ready." Jack's instincts were right. A few nights later, Shadow alerted him to movement near the barn. Jack grabbed his rifle and moved quietly through the darkness. The thugs had returned, this time with more men. They carried weapons and Molotov cocktails, ready to burn Jack's farm to the ground. Jack took a deep breath, steadying his aim. "You made a mistake coming back." The firefight that followed was swift and decisive. Jack's military training gave him the upper hand, and Shadow played his part, taking down one of the attackers. In the end, the thugs fled, leaving behind their weapons and their pride. The next morning, Jack stood by the flagpole once more, watching the sun rise over his farm. The flag waved in the breeze, a symbol of resilience and strength. Sheriff Reese arrived, shaking his head in amazement. "You did it again, Jack." Jack nodded. "This land's worth fighting for." As long as the flag flew, Jack knew he'd done right by his family, his community, and his country, and he'd be ready for whatever came next.